Thank you, Daniel. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this executive committee meeting. Can I welcome Councillor Gibbs to his first meeting as a scrutiny chair? Morning, Sam. Councillor Haslam, I believe, is online. And we have Councillors Lacey, Aldred and Lunn actually with us in the room. So you're welcome. Have I missed anybody? If not, let's move on. Do we have any apologies? No apologies from the executive. Minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of July. You're happy that I signed those as a true record? Seeing nods around the table. Does anybody have any declarations of interest? Michael, please.
Thank you, Leader. Can I declare an interest in the Treasury Management papers as part of the finance pack? My employer is named in the papers, but I rely on a dispensation given to me by the Standards Committee to stay in the meeting and vote.
Okay. Gareth, please.
Yeah, my usual interest declared regarding any discussion or anything within the papers relating to second council tax premium and the likes. I've got a dispensation from the Standards Committee.
Okay, thank you for that. If there are no other declarations of interest, we'll then move on. Item 4, public participation. I understand that there is no public participation today. Thank you. And that takes us straight into the main item, which is the Q1 performance monitoring and budget report. We do performance first. We'll do it in our usual way that I'll come to Heather first to do a summary of the executive summary. Then we'll go into each section in turn: thriving places, sustainable, safe and healthy, and maximise potential. At each point, I will ask the executive members if there's anything that they would like to add or to highlight to that part of the report, and then I'll come to the chair of Scrutiny Board to introduce those members of Scrutiny chairs who have questions for us. We'll do the questions in turn. Okay, so Heather, can I come to you first, please, for a short summary of the summary?
Thank you, Leader. This is the new council plan for 25 to 29 with new ambitions, and it also has a new format. So all round, it's a bit of a different beast to what it was last time. We now have 5 new council plan ambitions: thriving places and power communities, sustainable and connected places, safe, healthy and living well, maximise the potential in one council. The appendix also sets out progress across these ambitions, and there's a number of graphics that have been added to hopefully give an indication of the overall performance and how we're travelling towards our ambitions. There's a new thing with the landlord service. We're trying to display its ongoing development with monthly reporting, but I'm sure the portfolio holder would have more of a view on that and might understand it better than I. There are key points for this quarter. Upturn in museum and cultural hub visits. That is to be welcomed, especially the now problems have been sorted in a couple of venues. We are hoping that the footfall will increase. Highways are performing quite well at the moment. Referrals to children's social care is the lowest for 2 years for this quarter, but I'm sure they have some other places where they could improve. Reablement packages are increasing, and we're getting more help for people out there. And also educational healthcare plans are getting quicker, hopefully. So that will be picked up later on, I imagine. However, there are still some things which are causing concern: homelessness, the child protection plans, and short-term bed-based placements. And in education, we seem to be experiencing more permanent exclusions. But once again, the correct people to address these are the portfolio holders, and I'd hope that they can perhaps explain that a little better than I. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Heather. let's move on then to the first section, which starts on page 21 of the printed papers. Thriving places and empowered communities. Any colleagues around the table want to say anything at this point? Simon, please.
Thank you, Leader. Just to highlight, as Councillor Phillips has said, that there is a much more detailed representation of the position of our landlord services now, which is part of our commitment to improvement and part of our commitment to transparency, and very much in line with holding ourselves to account and matching our delivery against our ambitions. So it is all there, black and white, for everybody to see how we're getting on. Thank you.
Okay. If there's nobody else indicating, Karen, can I come to you, please, and for you to invite your scrutiny colleagues to ask any question on thriving places.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. Yes, we have a few questions on thriving places and empowered communities. And if we start with David Staveley, Councillor Staveley, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'll start with page 25, museum and cultural hubs visits. Councillor Myers, do you feel there is a relationship between the broadly increased footfall numbers across the county's centres and our improved cultural offering performance?
Thank you, Councillor Staveley. All the metrics show that where you have a thriving cultural sector and cultural venues, then they do drive increased footfall in town centres and so on. It was very much the experience we had in Skipton, and indeed it always forms part of the business case for investing in those facilities. And as we know, generally, footfall in our major market towns is holding up well. And in the same way, the visitor numbers to our cultural venues and attractions is holding up well. It is slightly down on the same quarter last year. That may be in part to do with the very warm weather. That means people go to different outdoor attractions. But yes, I think there seems to be a correlation between the two. And the better our offer, the more we develop our services in those terms, I think the better it is for those town centres and so on, both for ourselves and for the businesses that serve visitors.
Any more questions, David? Only if you.
Not on that subject. There's further down in this item, or do you
Okay.
have me
No, then no. Sorry about that. Thank you. No, Sam, Councillor Gibbs.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Leader, for the welcome. I've got two questions which I'll ask together because they're both on page 28 and they're both under the section of households accepted as homeless. The report says, as seen from the increases in numbers accessing the services, there are challenges in meeting the demand, and this is placing pressure on the service when looking to successfully prevent and relieve homelessness. So the first question is, how confident are we we're in a place to meet these demands, and what steps are being taken to ensure we can continue to meet the demands if they increase? And the second question is on geography. Under the same section, I want to know, are we seeing, whilst overall the picture hasn't changed much, are we seeing different trends in different parts of the county? Obviously, there could be anomalies between perhaps former district areas, and North Yorkshire is obviously a very big place.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbs. And it's really good that you're highlighting what is a very important issue for the council and our residents. And just to give a heads up, the new homeless and rough sleepers strategy will be coming to the executive when we meet in Selby on the 16th of September. So to take the last question first, is there a difference across localities? Really, the answer is no, it's the same issue. It is more difficult in some areas to address that issue because some areas have a lack of private rented sector accommodation and particularly larger properties. But generally, the trend is across to all of the former districts. Yeah, as far as the sort of former, the first part of your question was concerned, how do we tackle it, and are we capable of meeting demand? Well, the strategy will come into place following the next executive meeting, but more joined up working with agencies through the Homelessness Forums and North Yorkshire Homelessness Partnership. We're having more regular meetings with the RPs, the registered providers across North Yorkshire, to discuss homeless prevention. Those meetings start in September. Better website media campaigns to educate the public, providing information for outreach services, working closer with the landlords through our landlords forums, and using data more intelligently so that we identify households at risk before it becomes a crisis. In terms of our ability to meet the ever-increasing demand, as councillors know, we have committed funding to increase our temporary accommodation stock. We've been buying units of temporary accommodation across North Yorkshire, most recently in Scarborough and in Norton. We also, I think, are doing a better job at finding good quality, affordable bed and breakfast establishments that will work well with us. It's not our preferred method of addressing issues, but sometimes one needs that capacity. As councillors know, it's a very expensive way of meeting the demand. And our new homeless system has much more capacity for cross localities working, which allows more resilience across the whole of North Yorkshire. And then I hope, as I say, the 5-year homelessness strategy will come into place in September. And as councillors know, we also have ambitions to build more supported housing and to develop a new place of change for long-term rough sleepers in the Scarborough area, which we hope will be transformational, because the worst thing is that people who are repeatedly homeless. And so we have to try and address some of the long-standing issues with some individuals with complex needs, and see that we set them on the right path to not becoming homeless or rough sleeping again. So it's a big challenge, but I hope we're making great strides in addressing it. But of course, the demand is increasing all the time, and those are factors outside our control.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Karen, can I come back to you, please?
Yes, the final question on this section is from Councillor Brodigan. Barbara?
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Myers, the Young Persons Pathway was successfully integrated into the Housing Needs Service in February this year. What impact has this had, or will it have, upon care leavers? And could this information in future be brought to the Children and Young People's Overview and Scrutiny Committee, please? Thank you.
I think, sorry. Did I go silent for a moment? How very unusual. But I think we do have a real commitment to improve where we can what we're able to offer in the way of supported and unsupported accommodation for those on the new pathway.
Nick, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just to add that through the new council, are close working with children's and adult social care should hopefully allow us to plan much earlier for care leavers and also young people at risk. So rather than dropping off a cliff edge at a certain age, hopefully all children age at the same rate, so we can be able to plan for that going forward. And that's something our teams are getting their heads together on, and hopefully can crack in the near future.
Okay, Karen, did you say that was the last question in that section?
I stand corrected. Councillor Staveley.
Thank you. Yeah, page 30, planning performance. Despite better than statutory target performance, is in both major and minor applications, does this target and our performance lack ambition, given planning is a source of frustration for members across the floor, invariably whenever it's raised at various different forums? And that being the case, what could be done to improve the performance? And secondly, the report does lack any reference, as that I feel, or any sort of performance reference to the planning enforcement element of our work, because once again, I think that's a very important part of the council's work from residents' perspective, and it would be useful future reference to actually have some metric in there to say how well we're performing in that sector if possible. Thank you.
Okay, David, thank you. Can I invite both of our planning members to make a contribution to that? We'll start with policy with Mark, please.
Well, the policy is national policy, so that's why the targets are in, and the targets that we are meeting, I think, is to be applauded by those working in the planning service. You will be aware we are still a significant number of planners down, and we, as I've said before, we are not alone in that. I think every adjacent authority has a shortage of planners as well, as far as I'm aware. Certainly the ones I know well all have that. So the targets are government set, and we are adhering to them. And as you can see, we are exceeding them. We are planners down, so clearly things are not so easy. The other thing I would say is that when somebody puts in a planning application and 6 weeks later gets the result, they don't generally write to their local councillor. The only time you hear from somebody about planning is when something's gone wrong. And I'm sure that's the case on all sorts of things. So the only cases you ever get across your desk is where something has gone wrong or somebody hasn't got a result in time. I was recently given the case of somebody who'd written to their local council and said, I've been waiting for a reply for 9 months. And I went to planning and said, this is not acceptable. The person's had 3 responses in the 9 months, but they weren't the responses they wanted. So they want the planners to go back with a different response. And until they get the response they want, they do not consider that planning matter to have been resolved. It is resolved. The answer was no. And on the enforcement thing, I think a fair point, Councillor Staveley, and something perhaps we'll look at in future. The other thing I'll say on the positive side of enforcement is there were a couple of previous district areas where enforcement was not a high priority. We have taken those areas on and we have done, I think, some very good work there. Of course, the other thing that's happened is where people become aware that suddenly we are taking enforcement action, more cases come in. So we've seen a significant rise in cases in 2 previous areas. I won't name them, but one of them is very close to the sea.
Thank you, Mark. Heather, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. To continue the theme, I think the best way of addressing councillors' concerns is to address them to the relevant portfolio holder. I think that there has been an appetite for going, shall we say, right to the top, when maybe you'll get your answer quicker if you come to the portfolio holder. If you take it in context that last year there were around 4,700 applications, major, minors, others, and a similar number of other items, trees, hedgerows, etc., then I think the volume of discontent is very small, in effect. As Councillor Crane has stated, people only come to us when they're really disappointed or get the wrong answer as far as they're concerned. If we're 15 planners down, then we are going to have issues. I mean, I'm trying to give you the reasons. There's excuses for things going wrong, but the reasons are there in that we don't have a shared technological solution yet. We are rolling that out, and hopefully people will see that coming across. I know that Harrogate has gone through that process. A lot of lessons have been learnt, and there is an appetite for the planning delivery to be the best. Both Councillor Crane and I have been part of an improvement board, and the main thing that came across from me was that there are a lot of middle management planners, to put it politely, who have got ambitions and have got ideas, and they use phrases like first, exemplar, be the best, deliver what we, the best service we can for our residents. So I'm confident that there is a definite appetite to change. And yeah, enforcement has not been our strongest point, but we have 2 very, very good managers who are taking forward this very proactively, and we're getting responses as in a very quick order. So yeah, keep pushing them onto the portfolio holder and get your answers that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Can I bring Councillor Haslam in, please? Paul, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a brief question on this particular thing, which was for, I think, Councillor Myers, really. What's the current vacancy rate amongst our own housing stock in terms of how quickly we can turn it round from when one person leaves and somebody and a new family or person comes in? Thank you.
It may be, Councillor, that the ever talented and gifted Nick Hahn will be able to come up with a precise figure, because we have had them quite recently. What I can say from recollection is that it is well within norms. We do have some long-term voice, but of course, as you'll be aware, what part of what we try and do at the moment is to bring homes up to a decent standard when they're vacant, and particularly in some of our areas, that's a bigger task than merely slapping a bit of paint on. But maybe, and of course, we're doing a lot of retrofitting, as you'll be aware at the moment, Paul. So, but I think Nick has an answer.
Thank you, through you, Leader. So page 120 of the performance of the overall pack has the performance figures there against relet times. You can see for it does it by quarter. So March was 147 days, but just to stress, that's the average time. And what we're doing is a piece of work to break these down into 3 different categories of minor, middling works and major works. And as Councillor Myers has said, we're inheriting a significant number of what we'd call major work requirement properties. We don't want to relet these in the state that we're inheriting them in. In future and over time, capital programs and investment in these properties will bring void times down. But currently, because of the level of works we're doing on them, the time takes quite a while. The actual overall number of voids, though, is coming down month by month. And if you look in the performance appendix for housing, it should have the stats there about the overall number of voids on its way down. Thank you.
I don't think you'll be in this camp, Paul, but there have been suggestions to me from some members of this authority that we shouldn't do any of this, and it's more important that we just let them, even though we regard them as substandard. Well, I can give an absolute commitment that this council will not let substandard property to new tenants, that our duty is to provide decent housing for people, not the sort of housing that causes the tragedies that we've seen in other authorities. So our commitment is to upgrade our housing to decent home standards.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Can we now move on then, please, to the next theme, which is sustainable and connected places on page 35. Any colleagues want to say anything about this? No, in which case, Karen, can I come to you, please?
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Staveley has some questions.
I'll take them one at a time, if that's okay, Chairman. So, Mr. Binns, there's been some issues in terms of the performance and fleet in the implementation of the new delivery rounds. Could you give us a bit more detail on that, please? And would it be fair to say that there are lessons being learned for the future implementation and rollout of the new collection regime? I know you've just recently imposed, Councillor Foster, so you may wish to refer to somebody else, but it's obviously a frontline service along with planning that's very much one of the metrics that by which we're measured by the general public in terms of our performance. So I think it is important to understand the problems where they may be. Thank you.
You are correct. I am new in post, but this is sort of an ongoing issue still. I think on the whole, especially moving to the 4-day week, I think we've done really well. I think that the staff have taken that on board fantastically well, and they are working hard and working well, and that has been a real positive. On the negative side, I think probably mainly the Harrogate area, we have had some issues with rounds, and we can only really apologise to residents with that. We're working on those rounds, trying to make sure it's route harmonisation and route optimisation as well, and making sure. And we've missed certain streets. They've not been on collections, and the reporting and stuff. So you are correct. I think lessons have massively been learned through this process as to how we do that moving out in the future. We're also looking at, we're on the 4-day week now in Scarborough, correct?
From September.
From September, so that is our next big piece of work. But then we're going to take a bit of a sort of like a rest on new schemes and just make sure that everything is in place and people are getting a regular bin collection that they're expecting, and that we don't have members getting quite often irate residents going, my bin has not been emptied now for a long time. And so I think we've lessons to learn, and a lot of lessons have already been learned on this. So as we move forward, I think we should do it smoother. We're also done some of the move out onto the three streams of collection, or four if you count garden waste in some areas. And I think we just want to have a look back over how we've done that as well, and make sure that we do that in a more smooth way in future, and make sure that the general public have the option. So I think we're always going to learn lessons from doing this as to how we move forward. But I think the bin service on the whole is performing pretty well outside of Harrogate at the moment. Missed bin collections are lower in other areas. We've just had that glitch, so to speak. We're also in the summer holidays as well, which doesn't help because we have crews away, and we do rely on a bit of outside staff coming in. So various things at this time of year, but we promise, don't we, that these things will be ironed out.
Sorry about that. Yeah, just to add a bit more detail, really. So, I mean, when we made the changes, we chose Harrogate as the first area specifically because we knew that would be our area of biggest challenge in terms of the nature of the place and the issues with the services. We are intending to go back and do some further tweaks and changes probably in October this year to deal with some of those more local issues. Worth, I think, just setting in context as well some of the other changes we've done to the waste service. So we've not only we harmonised the working week, or will have done, we've done Scarborough in September. We also removed some working practices as well from this year. So from January, we ended the practice of task and finish, and you'll have seen nationally that that's had some big issues in other places where that hasn't been tackled. So to do that across one of the largest councils in the country in a very short order, I think is to be recognised. We also went to standardise start and finish times for all the crews. We did that as well from earlier this year, and we also required all crews to start and finish at the depot as well. So we have much better staff engagement with the crews. We've also changed much of the management arrangements across the county and got much tighter around things such as sickness absence. And we also introduced random and at cause drug and alcohol testing as well in terms of the safety and the nature of the way we manage our service. So just wanted to put all those changes in context to show that what significant change we've made across the service in a very short period of time to harmonise it and try and provide a good quality, consistent service to all our residents wherever they live across the county. The next phase, when we've learnt our lessons and embedded this in, will be obviously to make sure that we have a consistent recycling collection arrangement. The former Rydale being the first place that we implemented that couple of months or so ago. So we'll continue to return to this topic, I think, and make sure members, particularly on a local level, are fully briefed and fully aware as we move through the changes.
Thank you, Carl. Councillor Haslam, you want to make a contribution?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Bearing in mind the difficulties in Harrogate, and I appreciate that a lot of work is now going on, but it's still not. There is still work going on, I understand. Would it not be prudent to hold back on Scarborough till all the lessons have been learnt? I only say this as a member of the council and wanting to be seen to be good at what we do rather than actually imply. I just wonder if we should take breath before that, but obviously you have all the detail in front of you and I would leave it to you, but I just asked that question.
Okay, Richard, can we leave you to take that away and consider that, because we have a number of other questions to deal with. Karen, can I come back to you now, please?
Yep, thank you. Fly tipping, page 37. The quarter four figures 23-24 compared to 24-25 seems quite a sizable increase. And I know that the report suggests that there was a drop for quarter one this year from quarter four last, but that figure in itself is substantially higher than the previous two quarter one figures. what's the issue? You know, is there something going on? Is there some change in our service that's caused a problem? Is there an issue with criminality in certain sectors? What would it be that's driving this increase in fly tipping incidents? Is, you know, neighbouring authorities changing their policies, for example? I know that's something that's sometimes been cited before.
Unfortunately, it appears to be sort of like a national thing, so I don't think it's really anything that anybody else is particularly doing, or nothing that's come up that we can see. So we are looking at, we've hopefully got a new fixed penalty notice scheme coming forward to the executive, I think in September, isn't it? It deals with many things, but fly tipping is one of those. I think we're also looking at coming up with a new sort of enforcement strategy that runs across the council, which this will be part of. I think fly tipping annoys everybody, doesn't it? I mean, I'm quite happily. Well, there's nothing makes me angrier than when you drive past and somebody's left a fridge at the side of the road and you're thinking, you know, we do have household recycling centres. They are still there. They are still operational. They are still accepting things from households. I just don't really understand why people do it to a certain extent. I think where it's been commercially done, if we catch them and we're going to get better at catching them, I think that's one of the things that I want to see done, that we get better at catching the people who are commercially fly tipping. You know, they're going around somebody's house picking it up without transfer notices. We need to get on top of this, and we really need to make sure that those people do, you know, take the fines, take the jail time. You know, there's possibilities around that, and we will prosecute beyond a fixed penalty notice if we think it's worthwhile doing so. So it's moving forward. It's a work in progress. I think that's the best way of describing it as far as enforcement goes for us. But that doesn't mean we aren't enforcing at the moment if we come across something.
Technology isn't helping me this morning. Really just to reinforce the point around, so the fixed penalty notice policy, we're looking to bring that forward to executive on the 16th of September. That will harmonise the approach, because again, we've inherited a range of different approaches, different fines and arrangements. And the intention really is to take a very robust stance to, where possible, to seek the maximum fines permissible under the guidance and legislation, but also not shy away from prosecution and effectively naming and shaming people that are carrying out these activities and spoiling the environment. We are looking to put some additional resource into the teams as well to take that forward. And I think, as Councillor has said, really, it's the start of a new and more robust approach going forward. Nationally, in terms of the increase, we think that's potentially the lighter nights and very dry weather we've had has maybe caused some additional fly tipping over and above our normal stats. But beyond that, we can't find anything or any particular policy changes or decisions we've made that would lead to the increase that we've seen, because it is national and not just local.
Thank you, Carl. David, am I coming back to you for another question?
Yeah, there's two questions on highways from Councillor Taylor. Right. Dangerous defects. The target is demanding, and for good reason. Is our failure to meet that target one of resource, or is there some other underlying issue that could be pointed to towards identifying the reason for that failure?
Yeah, thank you for your question. And as per the narrative in the report, some reporting data entry issues are likely to have adversely skewed those figures. This has now been rectified, and the upward trend is a positive start. The 2-hour response times can be impacted by a number of factors, including the overall volume, number of defects at that point that have manifested themselves, and the impact of adverse weather. And the ability to address those defects within timescales during adverse weather events, such as the January 25 snow event. It's also difficult to predict when a dangerous defect will present itself, so there will always be a slight lag when there's an upturn in service demand. In addition, North Yorkshire Council continue with our programme of proactive highway inspections, as well as our programme of capital schemes investment. Where defects are such that a highway officer considers them to be of greatest risk, they will sometimes enact what we call an immediate make-safe repair using coal lay material, which is carried within the vehicles. and then they will get a dynamic risk assessment done to get that addressed by a North Yorkshire Highways crew as soon as possible. There is work to be done. It's work in progress, but we do have some strategies in place to address our performance.
No, I think it's fine.
Thank you. And the final question, the claims outcomes. Given the target of 80% of claims to be repudiated, is this not necessarily focused on fair outcomes and more to do with a financial target? Because it does seem a little unusual to have a target for something like this. I could understand a timescale target, but to actually have a refusal of claims target seems a little unusual to the outside commentator. So could you give us some nuance on that, please?
Yeah, the service unit has already identified that current performance in this regard is not where we want it to be. The first challenge is to achieve the existing 80% target, since average performance over the last 2 years has been below that figure. Measures have already been enacted to facilitate a more forensic analysis of data where claims have either been lost or conceded, to ensure that the reasons for loss is fully understood. This can be for a number of reasons and can include the defect missed at pre-accident incident inspection, a temporary repair failed, or works order raised but not actioned by the deadline. This type of work goes hand in glove with the earlier narrative around minimising the presence of defects on the network as much as possible in the first instance. And once we perform at or above the 80% repudiation rate, which we aim to be ASAP, we will review this target with a view to raising this bar higher.
Does that complete all the questions on sustainable and connected places?
Yes, it appears to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we then move on to safe, healthy and living well on page 42? Can I ask any colleagues if they want to make any contribution? And if not, I'll come to you, Karen, please, for questions.
Thank you. I'd like to go to Councillor Brodigan.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Sanderson, I've got 2 questions for you. Do you want me to do them consecutively or one at a time?
It might be helpful if you actually did them both together.
I've done both together. Okay, thank you. We'll start with the good news then. The mass contacts are rising steadily, but referrals to children's social care are declining, which is the lowest in 2 years, and that is good news. However, the timeliness of assessments are quite worrying. This quarter is the worst quarterly performance in 8 years. The days to assess has risen and the numbers completed within 45 days has reduced. My question is, what is behind this? And also, what happens to those people referred to MAST who do not then go into the social care services and interventions? My second question is about child protection plans. The number of open child protection plans have increased for the 6th quarter in a row, and the rate of child protection plans per 10,000 of population is statistically higher than the national recorded rate or the statistical neighbour average. What is driving this, and how is this going to be addressed? They're my questions. Thank you.
Sorry, pressing the wrong button. Perhaps. Thank you, Councillor Brodigan, for your questions. I think the observation and comparison of the rising mass contacts and the reduced referrals to children's social care is a really good point. And I think there are a number of inferences here. So the rising contacts to the mass could simply be the result of increased awareness, that more people are aware about issues and that they have a duty to report in. So it could be that is increasing and driving it, or it could be that there's a genuine safeguarding issue. But as these haven't translated to referrals, we could assume the former, that it's an increased awareness. I'll let Stuart add to that. As they haven't translated to the re-referrals, then it could be that. If in doubt about a child's welfare, then yeah, I think it's better to be safe than sorry. So I would always ask that those are called in. With regard to the timeliness of assessments, timeliness has always been a really strong point in North Yorkshire, and so this is unusual. But given that the performance is still significantly better than both national and statistic neighbour averages, then I think this is something we need to keep our eye on, but I don't particularly share it as an immediate worry. In respect of the child protection plans, I think, yes, we have seen these over several years rising. I think it's, again, it's a reflection of the times we live in, but I'm going to put Stuart on the spot to give a bit more detail on that.
Yes, thank you. So just a few bits on that. So you asked what happens to those referred if they're not going on to children's social care. So in the contact centre, there's no threshold about what people may ring and ask for. So anyone who rings gets their call answered and logged, and a variety of things can happen. There are a proportion where, after looking at that, there's no further action required. There are some where we're just contacted for information only. Some are given advice. Some are signposted to other things, and some go directly to our early help service. So there's a variety of things. And the increase in contracts has been driven largely by the police service, as they've recovered from being in a very poor position previously. So we see that as being more appropriate, that what they send to us should be sent. But a big proportion of that will just be for information and advice, because they're just sending us everything. So there is more work to do with the police around proportionality, which may drive contact levels. So the threshold decision for referrals hasn't changed. It's just what happens with the rest of them may change given what comes at us over time. But there's always a variety of outcomes. The reduction in referrals is welcome, but it's early days, and we just need to see what happens with that moving forward. Again, it's not something you manage by a number, it's something you manage by need, and we'll see what comes in. The timeliness, yes, it still remains strong compared to most places nationally, but we would prefer it to be as high as we can get it. Plans have to be completed in 45 days. We would always prefer for that to be earlier in the journey, and we're still quite early in that journey compared to a lot of places. But it is something we're just keeping our eye on. It's a reaction to demand and capacity as we adjust our numbers of staff to the demand coming in to make sure we can respond to things in a timely fashion. And we've been on with that for some time. CP plans, again, we don't manage this by threshold. Sorry, we do manage it by threshold. We don't manage it by numbers. So we don't have a quota. It's what comes at us. But there's a lot of work just looking at appropriateness. Are we managing these in the right way? There's a counter to it of we really don't want to drive families into child protection if we can avoid it. There are better ways to work with families than the threat of child protection, if we're quite frank. So we are doing a lot of work. What I know under the data is a turning of the numbers coming in for the first time, but that will take time to work through the system. So I do expect the numbers of plans to fall over time, but it might just take a while for that to work through our system now as we see some of the indications of that happening. Thank you.
Karen, can I come back to you, please?
Thank you, Ali. Councillor Baker.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you. Can I commend the production of the Action on Poverty by the officers, a guide for schools in North Yorkshire? Could I suggest it's circulated to members so that they're aware of the issues and challenges facing our schools with regard to poverty in North Yorkshire? Also, congratulations to the North Yorkshire Health Schools and Early Years Award Programme, which continues to go from strength to strength. And I think it's a wonderful programme, so thank you for that. Regarding the Growing Up in North Yorkshire survey, on page 18 of the Gunny report, it states that 12% of pupils who responded to the survey stated that they'd been victims of violence and 8% had carried weapons. Clearly, this is an item of concern,
And how does it relate to national trends and statistics? And have we data to show how this trend is progressing here? Whoever's desk it falls on.
Yeah, well, it's a survey done for Children and Young People Services, undertaken in partnership with our public health team and the police, actually, who we co-fund this survey. So the first thing I'd say is this is something we still do as a local authority, where many others have dropped this sort of survey a long time ago. And that's relevant because we ask a series of questions that aren't part of national data sets. So there's a bit of an answer that says, I don't know how others perform because they don't ask those questions. We do. But then there's a couple of things I can say about it. So the relative incidence of knife crime in North Yorkshire is really low compared to nearly every other local authority area. So we should have some confidence that knife crime itself and the carrying of knives that then result in crimes is low here. But I can't compare that actual data. But as we know, what happens with this data is that's presented into individual reports for schools, so they can target their own work with children and young people through schools, through targeted work, through PHSE and other things. So it informs helpful data for the schools to understand what's going on locally. I think that is of concern, but I'm not concerned about where we are with that compared to anyone else in the country. And I'm pleased we asked the question so that we can do work really early in the system around knife crime. And we work in partnership with police and others around messaging to schools, messaging to parents, and there's information on the Safeguarding website for parents, professionals and others around these sorts of issues.
Thank you, Stuart. Karen, going to come back to you.
Yes, there's. I'd like to ask a question, and then there's Councillor Hugill as well. I wanted to ask a question on hospital discharges. On page 50, what is the impact of the increased rate of hospital discharges upon social care?
Thank you, Leader. I know we faced this question before, so I'll let Richard answer. Thank you.
Okay, so I mean, I think since COVID period, we've seen a significant exponential, I would say, increase in hospital discharges. So pre-COVID, they were about 9 per day. They're now averaging 15, 16 per day. Many weeks there are higher than that. I mean, first of all, I think I'd want to say, recognise the hard work of all of our teams who turn around people's discharges so quickly and actually are working with a higher volume of casework in that field. I think a couple of observations. One is, I think that puts significant pressure on our services. It also means we have to make a regular decision about the balance between supporting people already in the community and people coming out of hospital. And it's probably worth remembering that there are people, older people with physical frailty or dementia or mental health issues in the community who deserve equal treatment. And that's always the important balancing act. So it is a significant issue for us, as it is for most councils around the country, but we're doing our best to try and support. One thing that really helps is the point that was made earlier by Councillor Phillips about the increased capacity and uptake around reablement, because our whole thing is about keeping people as well and independent for as long as possible.
But if I can just add, we up until now we've talked about pre-COVID levels and post-COVID levels of discharges. We're now treating the current levels as the norm, and it's worth reflecting on the fact that we do not receive the funding to cover what is now what we view as normal levels of discharge, and that's having a significant financial pressure, notwithstanding the impact on people who need care.
Okay, and did you say it was?
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Hugill has a question to ask, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so my well, I see my role as a member champion is to bring issues within my remit that are giving concerns to not only myself but also to members across the council.
as some of you recall, my report at full council brought quite a surprising number of questions on a wide range of topics relating to climate change. But I think really one that sort of struck a chord with me was the question from Councillor Lacey regarding the sort of the summer temperatures in care homes, which I'm a little bit concerned about. And obviously the repercussions of those high temperatures. And I just wonder, moving forward, is it something that we could sort of include in sort of updates in reports to know that these issues are being monitored in the right way? Thank you.
Did anybody want to make an observation now, or do we just take this away and then consider it for future reports?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that, and happy to know that we have a flying squad, a quality team who work with all the care providers. So I will flag that issue with them.
Okay. Am I back to you, Karen?
No, that's it. Thank you for this section. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So then that moves us on to the final section, maximise potential, page 70. Can I just ask any colleagues if they want to make a contribution at this point? In which case, Karen, I come to you.
Yes, we've just a couple of questions, so go to Councillor Brodigan, please, first.
Thank you. Actually, I haven't got a question, just a statement to make, and that is to both Councillor Sanderson and Councillor Wilkinson with regards to the timeliness of education and healthcare plans. Improvements in the timeliness has resulted in the best performance in June for 4 years, with a significant reduction in the backlog of assessments, which is a really good news story. And so please pass on my congratulations to the team.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think we've all been relieved to see that backlog clearing, and I understand that it's the backlog's reduced even further since this report was written. So that is a good news story. However, I think we should be mindful that as that bulge moves through the system, it could cause us problems further down the line. So yes, I'm relieved, but also I'm keeping my eye on it as it passes through. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. There's two other things I'd just say about that. So thank you very much. I know that at the end of that quarter, we reported at about 58.7%. I now know it's over 70%, which is way above national average now, which collapsed to less than 50%, which is a good, we're delighted with that. And what that also means is we've grown the numbers of our own educational psychologists, which now allows us time to do preventative work as we start to turn our eye to exclusions and other things around. So there's targeted work happening this year for the first time, which we'd like to have done in previous years, targeting where we may have had bulges of exclusions in schools to work with them more preventively as we move forward. So it's good news all around that we can do that now.
Thank you. Karen, back to you.
The final question is from Councillor Baker.
Thank you. I know the high and increasing number of primary school children that have been permanently excluded. I want to delve a little bit into what is driving this. What interventions are being put into place to help schools manage challenging behaviour by our children? And is it the same schools, academies? Are they clustered? Is this due to an approach by a particular school or trust? Or is the primary school exclusions increasing due to the longer term impact of COVID and enforced social isolation and the lack of socialisation during a key period in the child's early development? What research and data are available on this? So we need to understand what is going on, as the primary school children of today will be the secondary school children in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Baker, for your question, and I totally understand why you've asked that today. The rise in primary exclusions has been gradual over the last few years, and there are a number of reasons given for exclusions, and in most cases, primary schools have excluded one child. However, in analysing the end of year data, officers have started to see some opportunities to work with targeted schools to prevent the use of exclusion, and particularly for children with an identified SEND need. We are developing a project that invites selected schools to work alongside the inclusion team, including educational psychologists, and this will enable schools to highlight concerns in the early stages. And we're also looking to increase the capacity and availability of preventative work across the county, and that's going to be available to all schools. But as we know, exclusion, a child normally has some complex need. There's something more than going on just that we see at the surface, and we're working hard with both the schools and the families and carers to address that, and I'm sure Stuart would like to come in on that.
Yes, thank you. So just a few points really. So the numbers of primary permanent exclusions is worrying, but you have to look at that in a context of about 20 to 25 children in a context of over 200 primary schools. So it tends to be only one child, and the head doesn't see it as an increase. They say, well, I only do this once in a blue moon, and we kind of go, well, once every 2 blue moons, please. But the important bit is the preventative work we can now do to try and look at patterns, targeting and reducing that by growing some expertise and then doing that with schools. So that work is underway. I mean, overall, comparing it to last year, we think there are slight reductions. The overall number of permanent exclusions, there was one particular school that did 14 to 15 exclusions, permanent exclusions. There's no patterns that I would say whether that was a local authority school, trust school. In this occasion, it happened to be a trust school. We called that chief executive and school in and reported it through to the regional director to make sure that they were held to account over that. And I know changes have been made to the leadership and direction of that school. So what I would say is we keep a really close eye on this, and we do challenge where we see anything happening, and we are constantly looking for patterns around it. But the overall numbers of suspensions and exclusions, we think is shown a slight reduction, but it's a piece of area that we, as well as attendance, we are working very hard with schools and others to reduce over time.
That has answered the question, because we didn't know if it was a cluster or spread. But yes.
Yeah, there's no particular, if you look at it year after year, there's no one thing you would say it changes every year, and then we react to what's happening in that year and challenge where appropriate. And I can assure you we do that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Karen, does that conclude your questions?
That concludes the questions from the Scrutiny Board. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you all for your contributions this morning. I think we can once again note the strong performance overall, but equally important, where there isn't strong performance, we're aware of it and we're doing something about it. So with that, can we move on to the next part of the report, which is the revenue budget? And Gareth, I'll come to you.
Thank you, Carl. I'll be very quick indeed, given it's Q1 and it's merely given us some indications and some trends. You will note that we're £5 million projected to be £5 million at this stage of the year overspend, albeit that's less than 1% of the expected budget, but it does hide a growing and worrying trend within children's services, I'm afraid, that's reporting an overspend of in excess of £10.4 million. That can't be fudged. I know that there's a national issue there, but you know it's certainly an issue within North Yorkshire. You'll also note that without action, we will have used reserves to the tune of about £57 million by March 28, and that is before the Fairer Funding Review 2.0 that will likely give us formula changes and a worsening situation. I suppose the strong message is be prepared for the most severe budget round that this authority and its predecessors has ever faced. A couple of bits of good news. I'm pleased to see North Yorkshire Highways have provided some efficiencies and some paybacks in the form of rebates to our service. And you will also note at 2.2.7 that the National Pay Award settlement has been agreed. I think use the phrase has been an outbreak of understanding between both sides. That has given us a little bit of headroom within our predicted spend, but there will be some readjustment as we've seen. I think it was 0.2 on the pay scale removed, and those people migrated up to 0.3. So there will be some of that to go in. I mean, what's 1.4, 1.5 million when you're looking at a £57 million deficit 3 years hence? But every little helps. At that, happy to take questions. But before I do, I don't know whether Gary wants to add anything.
Nothing much to add, Chair, other than just to reiterate that there are some recurring pressures, none of which are really new, but it's just a continuation of those pressures, particularly on people-related services. But yeah, happy to take questions, Chair.
Can I open it up for questions or comments, please? As Gareth says, it's Q1, so it's early days in the year. Right, doesn't appear to be any questions, Gareth. So would you like to move the recommendation?
Probably move it.
Okay. Are we happy then to note the note the position on reserves? I'm seeing nods. Okay. Let's move on then, please, to Treasury Management, please, Gareth.
Yeah, very quickly, statement of fact, strong performance again from our Treasury Management team and officers. So just formally move it, Carl, unless there is any questions on it.
Any questions, please? No. So again, recommendations on page 165. So it's to note the TM activities and then refer this to the Audit Committee. And once again, we thank the Audit Committee for the work that they do on our behalf with regard to Treasury Management. Okay, so again, I'm seeing nods around the table. So capital account, please, Gareth.
Again, very quickly, there has been a change in presentation on this. It's been amended somewhat, and I think it's more readable and helpful. There's a minor recommendation along with the usual note that deals with a couple of issues over on the coast and the environment of money from one pot to another, but it is very minor, but albeit very welcome for those projects involved. So happy to take questions unless you want me to, unless Gary has anything to add.
Yeah, sorry, Gary.
No, Chair, I've got nothing else to add. As Gareth has said, there's a lot more narrative and concentration on the key projects. There are, as I've said beforehand, significant financial pressures in capital schemes in general, and we have a number of local pressures in there, but the narrative is in there. Hopefully that's more helpful. Probably better just if there are any questions to pick up those specifics.
Thank you, Gary. I mean, I can say that I did find it more helpful to have that narrative there. So anybody got any questions, please, on this? If not, let's go to the recommendations. So Gareth, would you move them formally?
Formally moved.
Okay, so again, let's have a show of hands because we are actually moving, even though it's only small amounts of money, we're moving money around. So those in favour, I think that is unanimous. Yep. Okay, so thank you for that. Let's move on to item 6, which is the Your Waste Tech agreement. Richard, can I come to you to introduce it, please?
Yeah, we're currently having an agreement with Your Waste. It's about to run out. And this is basically, we could have just carried that agreement on, but that agreement is from when we were boroughs and districts and they were the collection authorities. Now we are the collection authorities. So it makes sense to renegotiate because some of the things the government are going to want us to collect in the future, but also to get a new agreement that basically has us down as the collection authority as well as the disposal authority. So simplifying it, it's going to come down to the 5 years with a possibility of extension to 10 or 10 years with well, we've knocked out in 5, whichever way you look at it. But it's something we're going to need in place by September. So it's really over to members to decide, and we'll be negotiating that myself along your officers to bring that into place.
Okay, are there any questions, please, on this? If not, Richard, would you like to formally move the recommendations?
I shall formally remove the 2 recommendations.
Okay. And can I ask for a show of hands on this, please? Those in favour? So that's unanimous of those of us still in the room. Okay, thank you. And then let's move on now to the parking principles. So Malcolm, I'll come to you, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. This move marks a significant step in aligning parking policies with our wider goals of sustainability, economic growth and community well-being. The principles will guide how parking is managed and developed across North Yorkshire, replacing a patchwork of inherited policies from the former borough and district councils. Among the key themes are ensuring that parking provides a customer focused and value for money service that reflects local need, such as electric vehicle infrastructure, and allows communities to be connected to transport links. The aim is to make sure that the parking service is self-sustaining and there's fairness across our 170 car parks. These principles are not just about where people park, they're about how we support our town centres, reduce congestion, improve air quality and make our communities more accessible and attractive. It's about fairness, sustainability and delivering a service that reflects the diversity of our county, from our busy urban centres to our more rural communities. We're committed to working with residents, businesses and stakeholders as we move into the next phases of implementation. Add anything?
Carl, anything to add?
I mean, the only couple of things to add really were firstly, I think, as we've said a couple of times this morning, really, this is another scenario where we've had a multiplicity of approaches across the county and we're trying to get some level of consistency and fairness. I think we recognise with parking that one size doesn't fit all, which is why we're proposing to do local action plans, recognising that parking plays different roles in different locations. But there are some things which we think need to be applied universally across the county, which is why we're bringing forward this approach now. The intention is that we will start to have those conversations around the action plans in the autumn going forward, and clearly they will involve local members as well as town and parish councils in those discussions.
Okay, thank you, Carl. I'll open it up for discussion. I think Councillor Aldred, you want to make a contribution. Would you like to use that microphone?
Normally useless at these, so can everybody hear me? Hey, right, thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you. Sorry? I'm all right. Do I look like a troglodyte? Is that better? Yeah, thank you, Carl, and thank you, Malcolm, as well. And thank you, Steve. I know he's online as well and has put together most of the report. I'd just like to comment on it in my elected position as your representative, the council's representative, on patrol, which, for those of you who don't know, is a national advisory body. It stands for Parking and Traffic Regulations Outside London, which is a very nice acronym. I did want to go to the Transport and Scrutiny Committee when this was discussed on the 11th of July, but unfortunately I had a previous commitment, as Carl will know, at the Great Yorkshire Show on that day, so couldn't attend. Hence my attendance today. I do welcome this report. I think there's a lot of good things in it. It does lack certain specifics, but a report of this nature is always going to have those, I think. I do have 5 specific questions which I would like to have a reply on. Not necessarily today. There can be written reply. That's fine. And if you can go through those in order, I'm really pleased to see that you've put right at the top of the document, and you referred to it there, both Malcolm and Carl, that it is a local council and decisions on parking will be locally led and reflect each area's own needs and circumstances. There is a lack of specific timelines on some of the key areas, and residents have already been on to me as a local member about these, which are the controlled parking zones, which are going to be reviewed, the rebalancing and the one-off review of charges, and also, as you've just mentioned, the key town centre action plans, which I think is key to the whole report, which are being considered separately. And I'd just like some idea of a timeline on each of those three very big items. I understand it probably won't be quick, but it would help, I think, local residents if we do have some idea of a timeline. Also, I think Carl has actually just given me an assurance on this, but I'll ask it anyway. The report does say divisional councillors are going to be heavily involved in the town centre action plans, and obviously I welcome that. But I would say we need to involve town councillors as well and parish councillors, because they often know their patches intimately and they will have very, very interesting opinions on parking in their areas. I do welcome the park and ride being a valuable role and look forward to conversations on that, particularly in Harrogate. Mentioning Harrogate, one of the areas of media interest in the last week since the report was made public has been about DISC schemes, and the media seem to think that there is part of the principles is doing away with the very popular DISC schemes in Harrogate. Having read the report, I think it's actually very balanced, and you're not saying that at all. And in fact, there's a comment at 5.5 that a commitment to DISC zones, that they are important. So I'd just like some official kind of guidance that if DISC parking is recognised as being an important part of the mix in individual towns, that they will not just be thrown out of the window because it's not one size fits all, as we've just been saying. My final two questions. One is very simple. Blue badges. I think I've read this correctly, but can you just confirm the proposal is that we actually do away, well, we actually now charge for anybody in a blue badge the same rate as anybody else in our off-street parking, in our car parks, but obviously we are still going to allow those with blue badges to park for free on street, so to be near where they need to get to. But can you confirm, please, that we are going to charge blue badge holders in our NYC car parks? And the final question was on the issue of the baseline parking charge, which sounds to me like it's going to go up. And have we any idea at this stage what the baseline parking charge may be in relation to an hourly rate? As I say, broadly, I do welcome this report. I think there's a lot of good things in it, and it does tie in with national trends and legislation we do talk about in our patrol meetings. And I'm looking forward to being involved in taking these principles forward and help to develop them into specific and significant changes. I reiterate, I don't necessarily want answers to those questions now. Malcolm and Carl and Steve in writing will be okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Malcolm, can I come back to you and just, how do you want to handle this?
Yeah, I think Carl is just going to.
Yeah, I can deal with a couple of the issues now, Leader, if that's okay. So the first one, I'm not dealing with in order, but around disabled parking charges. I think as the report says, the principle is that we would consistently apply the charges on our off-street car parks, because again, we have a mixed picture across the board. It's different regulations in relation to on-street provision and the ability to park. So we have no influence on those. I think, as I said, when we do local area action plans, we would want to involve local members, but also local town and parish councils, recognising that they representatives of the patch and know how parking operates in their areas. So we would want to engage and have discussions with them. We want to start those conversations around area action plans in autumn this year. We haven't as yet got a detailed programme of what that looks like, given the scale of the county, but that's something that that Steve is currently working on. I take your point around detail in the report, but this is a high-level principles document, so not somewhere you would expect to see details of differential charges, and there'll be further reports that will come forward in due course that will set that out in detail. Chair.
Yeah, thank you. And if you just let me have the remaining questions in writing, I'll make sure you get a written response to them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Haslam, you want to make a contribution?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have two general questions and one very specific question on the document. The first one is, it mentions consultation. I have been a critic of how we do consultation on this council, and I would ask that the consultation is made much more of it is made within the report than is, though I do welcome the whole report in general, but I do think consultation is very important. I think also that consultation needs to be tied together to the local economy plan or policy, and also the local transport planning policy. So I think this cannot be treated in isolation. So it has to have a number of other, what I'd call policies brought to light with it at the same time. I think one of the things that's really important, and I don't think, again, the council's particularly good at this, is that we need to communicate and create expectations, particularly sort of over length of timeline, etc. So I think we need to communicate very thoroughly during this item. But as I say, I welcome a principled approach. And then finally, if you look on page 11 in section 6.1, it actually, I'll just have to pull it up so I can get the wording right. It says indications from Harrogate are that visitors are now able to pay for their off-street parking on return rather than in advance using pay and display, and are staying around 22 minutes longer. My question relating to this is that we've just renewed, I think it's the Victoria Centre, the parking in there, and you now have to pay and display before you go. So I've got a bit of a contradiction there, and I would like to understand why there's a contradiction in the action we've taken and the action we're proposing. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Malcolm, going to come back to you.
Yeah, in relation to the Victoria one, I think Steve Brown's online. He can probably address that better than myself or Carl if Steve's available.
I hope you can hear me okay. We actually reached a critical point in the two multi-storey car parks in Harrogate with the machinery that was in there, whereby by the end of this year, in fact in November, the system we had in there, the pay on foot system, would have in fact stopped working. It'd been there for 15 or so years and really had reached end of life. What we wanted to do was bring it into the framework of the machine replacement program that we're currently at tender at the moment, but unfortunately we didn't. We had to move quicker on it. Bear in mind that we only have 3 multi-storey car parks in the whole of North Yorkshire, and they're all in Harrogate. 2 of them were pay on exit, and the other one, which is West Park, has already been pay and display, which it currently is. You have to remember also that with machinery and the type we had in those 2 multi-storey car parks comes the cost of actually having people there to man it whilst it's open and then lock it up. And Harrogate Borough Council's legacy to us was they passed on some 8 FTEs in order to man, lock up and attend to those machines, because with barriers and people scanning blue badges and various other difficulties we were having with change in the machines, etc., was manpower intensive. We changed it to pay and display, pay and display. With that new system that's in those particular car parks, you can actually extend it, but you need to use the app from the machine. With the new pay and display machine replacement program, we need to wait till the end of that process, and then we'll reintroduce apps that will let you extend. So yes, you pay when you arrive, but you could buy, say, an hour and then extend it while you're out. So if you decide to go and have a coffee, or you're late for an appointment or at an appointment, you will be able to extend. You just can't do it right this second.
So, excuse me, Chair, if I just come back, the retailers are not happy about this particular move, and bear in mind we're talking about consultation and engagement. Perhaps some more explanation, communication of that would have helped in this case. But thank you very much for your clear explanation, Mr. Brown. And if you could address the other two questions, please, I would be grateful.
Okay, we'll come back to you on those then, Paul. Anybody else want to make a comment or ask a question? Simon, please. Sorry, Heather, I missed you. I'll come back to you. Simon, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, just really a comment. I'm very pleased that that we are recognising in this that there are different pressures across the whole of North Yorkshire, that it is not suitable to try and introduce standard charges or a standard methodology and approach to parking, because North Yorkshire's local economies are very diverse, and the role of parking is very different in some areas. So I really welcome that. I think members and the public should be under no illusion that in having a nuanced approach to it, it's a very big piece of work and involves a great deal of officer time. So often we get frustrated because things aren't delivered as quickly as we'd like, but this is a massive piece of work. It used to take Craven District Council ages and ages to put parking charges up by 10 pence. So I don't envy those with the task of sorting it out across North Yorkshire.
Thank you, Leader. A couple of quick comments. I think this is a very pragmatic approach. As Councillor Myers has pointed out, there are vast differences across the piece. Even between a village and a town next to each other, they can have different requirements. And also, I think it paints the picture that we aren't against cars. We understand that the nature of our county is that cars and travel by that method are vital because of the lack of other transport links. So I'd like to see how this is going to fit in with our mayor's transport strategy. So that's my point. Just we're taking it, we're grasping it, and we're getting on with it.
Okay. Anybody else want to come in? Richard.
Yeah, just to say that some changes have been made to car parking since this new authority came into being, and can those be looked at as part of this as well, as to are they successful, have they worked? I think, you know, we're looking at the future of it, but we have made changes.
Malcolm.
Yeah, I can assure you it will be a holistic review, including all existing changes that we've made.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, can I move you to the recommendations? It's a simple one, that we agree to adopt the parking principles document. Can we agree to do that? I'm seeing nods around the table, that's fine. And Malcolm, you have a couple of questions to answer after the meetings. Okay, thank you. So let's move on then, please, to item 8, the Trailblazer grant acceptance. And Michael, can I come to you, please?
Thank you, Leader. This item actually crosses a few directorates, but the Health and Adult Services have taken the lead in pulling this all together. I'll hand over to Richard Webb in a second to cover off the main points, but I just wanted to, in introducing it, highlight the fact that the proposals that we have in front of us today have been developed at pace by North Yorkshire Council, taking the lead to deliver support that's in line with what the government clearly wants to fund, which is helping particular groups of people who face the most challenging barriers to get into employment and maintain employment. One thing I would say is I think councils work best when they do take the initiative and work at pace to deliver a high level, to deliver a scheme that responds to a high level wish from central government. But sometimes we're constrained that government wants us to act like that, but then will impose a number of conditions that prevent us from delivering something quite so flexibly and agile that we would like to. But I think this is a good proposal in those circumstances. I'll let Richard say a few more words.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, this is part of the Get Britain Working programme. We brought the Trailblazer report a few weeks ago. The model here, as Councillor Harrison says, builds on long track record of work that we've done around supported employment. So particularly we've a team that helps people with mental health issues, learning and physical disabilities to get into either volunteering or paid employment. We've got some great examples of that. Local supermarkets. A young man wrote to us recently about how for the first time in life he got a job in a hotel in Moulton and he was earning his own wage and actually getting tips, and actually how good and valued a member of society that made him feel. So this has a proven track record. We had the opportunity with this funding now available through the combined authority. The proposal here is that we deliver the service not only in North Yorkshire, but also across the city of York. So this is a jointly supported initiative. It's a programme for up to 5 years. And as usual, there are all the issues about the DWP terms and conditions, which will need to be finalised. So we're seeking final authorisation via delegated authority here.
Okay, anybody want to make an intervention? Mark, please.
I welcome the report and support it, but I know I'm sounding like a broken record. The recommendation doesn't mention any elected member.
Would you like to include an elected member in the recommendations, Mark?
I'd love to include Councillor Harrison.
Michael, is that something that you would
I actually think if we look at 14.2, it is a typo. It's got an erroneous and at the end, and it should be in conjunction with the executive member. So we should amend that recommendation 14.2 to reflect what Mark's pointed out.
And that elected member would, that executive member would be you.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So can we alter that, please, and add that in? Yeah. Gareth, are you happy with that? Because it is the corporate director of resources, but
I'm happy to defer.
No.
But I agree with the point that it should be in there, but as to which one of us it is, I'm relaxed about.
It is standard practice that it would be me as the officer in consultation with the executive member for the portfolio. So
right.
It's
so that's the simple typo error. Thank you. Okay, so if that's been added to, I think we will have to take a show of hands on this because it involves cash. So unless there's any further contributions, can I ask those in favour to show? And that is unanimous. Okay, thank you for that. And I now turn on to item 9. This is a report on an urgent decision that a number of us were involved in making, but it's in your name, Gareth. So can I turn to you, please, to say what you would like to say?
Yeah, thank you. And I don't think today's the day that we'll get into a great debate about the detail around Brierley Homes or the Brierley Group in general. It's a statement of fact that's before us. What I'd like to add is that we have had an independent consultant look at the company. That report will be coming back in due course to this executive. I'm going to hand over to Gary because he's closer to the detail and the operational detail of it.
Thank you, Chair. So just to explain the decision that was taken urgently to which this report is referring to. So Briley Homes is a company wholly owned by the council, charged with delivering market-based housing, principally, that when it was set up. Over the years, though, it has delivered more and more affordable and some social housing. So it's extended the range of housing that it's been building. As a consequence of that, its loan facility was inadequate to deal with that. So Briley Homes pays the council interest on top of the Bank of England base rate, so it delivers significant shareholder value. And the affordable housing that's being delivered is in excess of policy, and therefore is a benefit to the council in its housing role. And so the additional loan was to represent the value of the additional affordable housing that's been delivered. And that at that point was £1.4 million. So the urgent decision was to give Briley Homes an additional loan of 1.4 million related to affordable housing, and that to be at base rate without interest added, because that was delivering the policy value for housing. So that was the urgent decision taken, and it was urgent because a number of sales fell through in the preceding weeks that Briley were expecting, and as a consequence of that, there was a risk that suppliers wouldn't get paid, and we took the view that it was important that a wholly owned company stood by its obligations to supply chain and made those payments. So we made that as an urgent decision, but as Gareth said, there will be a further report coming back to the executive on September the 16th, so just 4 weeks away, which will highlight some of the issues around managing the cash flow and the loan for greater detail. Happy to take questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Anybody got any questions or comments on that? That's Mark, please.
Well, it's an important decision, and so I'll make a comment if I may. I'm fully supportive of the decision that we've taken here, and I do think it's important to highlight two things, because sometimes the press runs away with a different story. When you think that we are loaning money at 5% above the base rate, there is significant benefit to this council, and also the number of affordable homes. I know Gary has already mentioned this, that Briley Group are delivering are significant and is a positive to the communities of North Yorkshire, in my opinion. So that's why I'll be supporting this today, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody else? Simon.
Yes, I suppose just to really echo what Mark said, that there are two aspects to Briley Homes that perhaps weren't present when it was set up by the then county council. The first is the commercial venture side of it. That was there, of course, and it has delivered returns to the council. But the second aspect that became implicit when the new council was formed, and the new council is the Strategic Housing Authority, is the delivery of homes and the delivery of affordable homes. So that is a priority for this council. And so it is in that context, I'm very happy to say that this was the right decision.
Okay, thank you. And just on that point, I mean, the report stands in Gareth's name, but a lot of us were involved in that decision-making process. And at the time, we thought that was the right thing to do. And we stand by that today. So this Briley Homes will come back in 4 weeks' time, I think you said, Gary. So in that case, can we note the recommendation, note the decision, why it was taken? Okay, and let's move on then, please, to the final item. Unless there's any urgent business, which I don't know about. No, sorry, not the final item. Item 10, we need to appoint Annabelle to the shareholder committee. And it's in the place of Greg White, not Mark Crane. So, Mark, you're not getting out of it. So can we just note that, please? And then item 11, the penultimate item. Heather, anything for us to note on the forward plan?
Just a reminder that we will be on our travels for the next executive on 16th of September down in Selby. there is one item that is particularly pertinent to Selby that day, regarding Cross Hills Lane. Later on in the year, in November, we're going over to Skipton. So if it'd be possible for people to think of items that we could take to that meeting, because we are trying to be as local as possible. I know that there's things for Knaresborough, etc., regarding Double Devo maybe. So perhaps we can have some really local focus at that meeting, and it might encourage our colleagues over there to attend the executive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Can we note the forward plan then? And I say I know of no urgent business, so thank you everybody for your attendance this morning and your contributions, and see you in due course.